Hello, welcome back to UrbanKonbu. Tonight, we're going over a bizarre murder mystery which led to a national manhunt in China. Robbery, gambling, and betrayal. Let's go. The story I'm about to tell you contains graphic descriptions that may upset certain viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. May 2002, in the province of Hubei, Yichang City, a married couple, Shan Huitian and his wife, had suddenly disappeared simultaneously, never to be seen again. According to records, the husband had answered a phone call that morning, and the wife had answered another that night. Details about the disappearance were unknown. There were no bodies, and the police could not establish a well-defined case, so they were registered as missing people. The Yichang police conducted minor investigation and interviews, but produced no results. On September 14th, at the shore of the Hangjiang River, Yichang City, a group of fishermen had stumbled upon a well-sealed bag, taped over by duct tape. There was a revolting stench coming from it. Suspecting the body, the fishermen sent a report to the Yichang police. Upon opening the bag, a torso was found. No heads, no limbs, no nothing. Due to the cruel nature of the crime, the Yichang police force formed the 9.14 Murder and Dismemberment Investigation Squad. This type of crime is a rarity in the area as has not happened in 30 years, and received heavy media spotlight throughout the country. The squad requested information from nearby cities for any recent missing person cases. 3 cases were returned, 2 were of the married couple, and the last one was of the owner for a furniture store, Mei Yunju. This specific missing persons case was considered somewhat odd. On August 25th, 2002, Mei Yunju was reported missing after making his family withdraw 210,000 RMB, which is roughly about $30,000 US. The police launched a full-on investigation because Zhu Mei Yun was often described as a very responsible man by his parents. His brother had suspected that he was kidnapped, and it turned out the suspicion was correct. Once blood and DNA samples were taken, the body was confirmed to be Yun Meiju's. The police quickly established the motive as robbery, due to the large amount of cash disappearing. According to the family, on August 24th, Mr. Zhu had called his brother requesting him to withdraw 200,000 to 300,000 RMB and to place it under the bed in the house he was renting. His brother could only acquire 210,000 RMB, which he placed under the bed as was instructed. When Mr. Zhu's brother returned the next day, his brother was still nowhere to be found and the money was gone. Yun Meiju had not appeared at all during the process of money withdrawal and delivery, but had been constantly monitoring the progress of the transaction through his cell phone. He had not told anyone what he was going to do with the money, except he was going to do some business with it. Police suspect he was being manipulated. Due to the nature of this transaction, police concluded that Mr. Zhu's manipulator and suspected murderer would be someone who was aware of the Zhu family situation and daily routines. They also believed that there had to be one more person involved, due to the speed of the kidnapping and how quickly the transaction was done. What stands out in this crime is that the kidnapper did not call the family directly, but had the victim call them instead. Making the victim say that the money was needed for business, it made this crime very seamless. Mei Yunju's family informed police that he was a frequent gambler, playing mahjong quite often, but had also discovered a new enjoyment in gambling and poker. Out of all 30 of Mr. Zhu's friends who played mahjong, only 2 of them played poker. One of them had a solid alibi, the other was named Yang Yuan Ren. Mr. Ren was not known to have a stable income, but had suddenly become a big spender right after Mr. Zhu had disappeared. Some noticeable purchases were his 2,000 RMB, roughly 400 USD tuxedo. He began to gamble every single day, sometimes losing 30 to 40,000 RMB on certain days. These 2 factors led him to become a prime suspect. According to witnesses, Yang Yuan Ren had told a few friends that he was going to kidnap and elicit money from victims. He also recently told people he had found a good way to make money, and that was to scam the big boss of a company. Kill the guy, hide the body, no one will find it. His friends all thought he was joking at the time. However, Yang Yuan-ren had recently moved into a newly furnished apartment unit, which maid Jun Ju had frequently to play poker. Due to this insurmountable evidence, the 914 Murder and Dismemberment Investigation Squad moved in to arrest Mr. Ren at his apartment, but he was nowhere to be found. September 23, 2002. After 48 hours of intense investigation and the cooperation of various undercover missions by police in nearby cities, Mr. Ren was discovered in an inconspicuous hotel in a small corner of the Hubei province. 2 days later, Yicheng police raided the hotel Mr. Ren was staying in the early morning and apprehended him while he was still sleeping. Mr. Ren had caught on that the police were about to raid him and had prepared money and supplies for a long trip around China, including thick coats for winter. If he had not been apprehended that morning, he would have fled further north and it would have been impossible to find him due to the lack of surveillance systems in less urban areas, as well as the predominant usage of cash rather than electronic payments, which is much harder to trace. Yang Yuan-ren, age 39, had a record of rape, violence, and had been sentenced for jail 3 years in the past. He was then sentenced another 3 years for robbery after getting out. He was known to have unsavory habits since he was a child, including heavy drinking, gambling, and playing around with women. He had big dreams of becoming rich, so he had turned to kidnapping and scamming and had planned to make a living doing this. After intense interrogation, Yang Yuan-ren confessed to the kidnapping and murder of Yun Mei-ju and ratted out his accomplice, Yan Ming-tao, age 32. Police apprehended Mr. Tao that same night. Mr. Tao had met Mr. Ren in prison, which he was sent to for 4 years for destruction of public electrical hardware. He had a previous prison sentence of 3 years for robbery as well. Yang Yuan-ren decided that Mr. Tao was a perfect man for the job, for he was rash, brave, and had a good physique and was easy to manipulate. Together, they quickly planned the kidnapping and murder. Mr. Ren had learned from his then gambling buddy, Yun Mei-ju, had recently sold a bunch of furniture from the store and had tens of thousands of cash on hand. With this information, the duo confirmed the plan and proceeded to kidnap Mr. Ju. They had agreed beforehand that no matter what happened, money or not, they were going to kill Mr. Ju. On the morning of August 24, 2002, using a public phone, Mr. Ren called down Mr. Ju to play cards, driving him to his newly furnished house. Meanwhile, Mr. Tao was already over there, preparing for the murder and dismemberment. After overpowering Mr. Ju, the two accomplices tied him down to a metal frame, then made Mr. Ju call his brother to ask for money using a pre-written script. They told Mr. Ju that if he did not do what he was told, his life was forfeit. Mr. Ju, possibly in the hopes of living, did as he was told. Afterwards, Mr. Ren went off to the drop-off point to pick up the money. After confirming the amount, he returned to his apartment to kill Mr. Ju and dismember him, sealing his various parts in snakeskin bags filled with rocks and throwing them into the deepest parts of the Hanjiang River. However, due to the heavy flow of the river and buoyancy, the torso still washed up on shore. Mr. Ren brought the police to the place where he threw the body, and there they discovered the rest of Mr. Ju's body as well. But what about that couple that was mentioned in the beginning? Well, this story does not end here. After a thorough search of Mr. Ren's apartment, the police had made an astonishing discovery. Turns out the newly furnished house was connected to a small unit beside it, and in that unit, there was a small trapdoor that led to a small parking garage below. In that garage, there was another trapdoor, hidden underneath 2 concrete blocks that led to an underground storage cellar. The cellar was large enough to fit 10 people and had chains and nails secured on the wall, probably used to hold his victims captive. It was almost completely soundproof, and was ventilated by what appears to be a sewage pipe, but was actually connected to nothing. Mr. Ren had bought this separate unit back in 2001, and had built the garage himself, which gives credence that he was planning for this for a very long time. According to Yang Yuan-ren, the sole purpose of the garage and cellar was murder, as well as the dismemberment of bodies for disposal. There was a complicated plumbing and storm drain system built within the garage that made it easy for the washing evidence of blood and other bodily fluids. Mr. Ren possessed massive amounts of illegal sleeping drugs, ropes for tying people down, and various tools of murder and torture. Books of Chinese law, specifically those concerning kidnapping, were also found. probably used by Mr. Ren to familiarize himself with the laws in case complications happening. After further interrogation, Mr. Ren let slip that the cellar was made to torture people and that Mr. Ju was not Mr. Ren's only victim. Upon further inspection, traces of Zhang Huitan and his wife's blood were found. He had told Mr. Tan that he was going to hire him to do some furnishing jobs, but it was only to trick him into his home. Afterwards, he made Mr. Tan call his wife over money for a hostage exchange. Afterwards, he murdered them both. Police soon found the couple's bank cards, ID cards, and more. Yang Yuan Ren had a habit of looking for victims among people that he knew, or that had a connection with. He targeted people with money and liked to do the murders himself in order to make sure there were no loose ends. He had always planned to murder the victims no matter what, the moment he had his eyes set on them. If Mr. Ju's torso had not been discovered, Yang Yuan Ren would have continued his plan to take more lives in his secret cellar. This was going to be his career. He had bought his 2-floor apartment unit in 2001 and secretly constructed a garage and cellar with a span of 1 year, solely for the purpose of murder and money. The sentencing of Yang Yuan Ren and Yan Mingtao publicly are unknown, but one can give an educated guess that they were given the harshest punishment under Chinese law, capital punishment.